Utah is struggling mightily right now on offense. And one thing that's been constant is quarterbacks, whether it's been Isaac Wilson or Brandon Rose. They haven't performed well. What's going on? And what does this Utah football team do now in a bye week? What can the rest of the season mean for Utah this year as well as in 2025? We're breaking all that and more down on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. This is your first time tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the comments, even when the comments are mainly negative, as the team is not playing very well right now. So you guys can drop your comments down there. We're also on social media at Locked On Utes. Today's episode of our show is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. Please place your first ever $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Once again, place your first ever $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. My name is JT Wistersill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by Ute Zone's Ethan Pierce. We're going to be talking about where this Utah football team goes from here. At the end, we want to talk about Utah basketball. Something crazy when you look at the schedule. Utah plays a week from today. That's right. Utah men's basketball is back a week from today. Like, wrap your head around that. It's crazy. And I know a lot of us are probably ready to move on to basketball season, which is something we never expected to be saying at this point in the year. But it's crazy to see how things have turned out. And a large part of the reason that things have turned out this way is the poor quarterback play of just Utah quarterback. It's been rough. If you ask me the biggest reason this team has struggled so far this year, there are other reasons contributing to it, right? Like yesterday, you see a couple of drops by receivers. I thought Bajakian did a lot of good things, but then, still like getting used to a play calling role once again, like with this Utah team. He's called a lot of plays in Northwestern, but still first game with this group, getting used to everything there. The interior of Utah's offensive line is struggling right now, as well as the tight ends blocking is not fantastic. So that's hurt their run game a little bit. But at the end of the day, Utah was still averaging, like Mekhi Bernard averaged 3 yards per carry. You look at Jalen Glover, he averaged 8 yards per carry yesterday. So you're getting, even if you're averaging three is not a fantastic yards per carry number. That still puts you in 3rd and 3. That should be enough to deliver there. And more times than not, Utah quarterbacks aren't doing it. So I still look and go, this is the biggest reason Utah has now lost 4 games in a row is they don't have a quarterback.
I think that's accurate, and it's unfortunate. And it really sucks to try to pile all of this onto a true freshman, because
1,000%.
Realistically, like, what can you really expect, right? Like a guy coming in out of high school and being tasked to lead a team that has this high of expectations. Replacing Cam Rising is not going to be easy for anybody. And Isaac Wilson has had good moments this year. Like the Oklahoma State game, everyone was talking about, hey, man, maybe he's the future of this program. And he still might be. But it's just tough to ask a true freshman quarterback to go on the road in conference and win with a team that's already been struggling, even outside of him. It's a tall order. And so, and he got banged up too. The injury was his wrist, his thrown hand. It's just a tall order. And Brandon Rose couldn't do much either. It's just a tough scene.
It absolutely is. And I'm glad that you went there and bringing up how it's not really Wilson's fault in terms of how awful of a position he's been put in. Because what I was talking about, what's wrong with Utah's offense, when you just turn on the tape and you go, why didn't this play work? More times than not, that falls at Isaac Wilson's feet. But like you said, Ethan, he should never have been in this position because as a true freshman, it's really hard to go out and play right away. It's why we see very few quarterbacks be able to do that. I mean, even a guy like a Dylan Raiola has had his up and down moments with Nebraska, right? So it's just, it's not easy to do. Wilson should never have been in this position. And the truth is that's where Utah, Kyle Whittingham, Andy Ludwig, when he's here, all the offensive staff did not do a good enough job recruiting and developing quarterback play to have a succession plan. Yes, they had Bryson Barnes and he left, but that's where, hit the transfer portal, find someone else. It's not easy to find good veterans, but like Sam Hewitt's played a lot of football. He's really not like even top 3. I don't even think he traded. I think Batari was QB4. I saw listed somewhere. So that's where you have to do a better job recruiting in the transfer portal or just recruiting and developing quarterbacks. Because even when Brandon Rose was out there, we saw that it didn't work out for him. So I agree with you there. Talk about Wilson's struggles a little bit more, just like when you go like, okay, what's wrong with Isaac Wilson? It's like we said, he's just not ready. Look, he's not seeing the field great right now. He's struggling to read defense, struggles with accuracy. His pocket presence isn't there. And like things like the fumble, where he steps up in the pocket and you just can't make it that throw in that congestion of the pocket, coughs it up, and then it's a fumble going back the other way. Utah's offense was doing good things until that point. They were at midfield until they turned it over. And things like there are so many misses in the flat and even like the screen passes. There was one in particular on one of Cole Becker's missed field goals. It was like 3rd and 3. They were throwing a screen to Zipper. It's wide. It's great blocked. It would have been a massive gain if the throw is just on target. It's a high throw. You cannot miss those throws. And that's where Wilson's not ready, like we said. And it's just unfortunate that he continues to be put in this situation each week. And I mean, between him and Rose, I really don't. We're going to do the whole Utah quarterback thing probably for the next 2 weeks where Whittingham teases the starter. Doesn't really make a difference. And I'll talk about why with Rose in a moment. But just your thoughts even more, Ethan, on Wilson's play against what we saw versus Houston.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard. It's not really the position that we thought that Utah would be at a deficit in, going into the season, right? It's like, okay, like we've got Wilson was a 4-star, right? Recruit coming in. It's like, okay, like we've got him. He's probably going to be like the 3rd string. Brandon Rose has been around the program. If we need to turn to him, he was a high recruit as well. And then Cam Rising obviously was like the guy that we thought that he was going to be the dude this year. And unfortunately the injuries and all that. But with Wilson, it just, I think it really, all it does come down to is he just doesn't look like he's ready. And you can't really place the blame on him for that. Changing offensive coordinators mid-season is another thing. And that's never easy, having to, I'm sure that they kind of tried to make it as easy on everybody as possible, but still you've got a different playbook with Bajakian in there, trying to switch things up, find a spark in some kind of way. And I think the other thing too is just the toughness of switching quarterbacks mid-season, especially going from a veteran to a true freshman, the toll that can take on the locker room. Because you have those guys that have been in there, they were expecting to go out and fight with Cam Rising this year, guys that have been through it with him. You talk about the main offensive weapons, Mekhi Bernard, Brant Keithy, Money Parks, like Cam Rising has been their quarterback, and they have won conference championships with him. And so to have him ripped away from the team early and then again mid-season, I think it's just got to be tough for those guys. I know that they want to rally behind their freshmen, but it can be tough when games like this happen. And I just wonder how much more they've got in the tank.
Cam earned the trust and belief of his teammates with what he did on the field. There's no doubt in my mind that this team goes out and fights for Isaac Wilson and like they care about Isaac.
I agree.
All the things of that nature. Like that's what happens in a locker room. But what you're talking about, Ethan, is he's just not performing up to the standard that Cam was. Not that they were expecting him to, but at the end of the day, just like when you're not getting that production as a defense, like you feel like it's more on you, you're going to be frustrated because the offense isn't doing anything. So that's where this all comes to a head at the end of the day. And yeah, Wilson is struggling right now. Utah's offense is struggling, and something that Brandon Rose also came in and struggled too. Not all his fault with some of those other drops and things that we witnessed, but that's what I want to talk about is why Rose also struggled once he was inserted into the game. We'll be breaking down that as well as just talk about what this Utah football team is going to do moving forward in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. With FanDuel, it is your place to go and your place to be for all of your sports betting needs. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place your live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can start with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports partner of the NFL. And it goes beyond the NFL too. There are so many other great things going on in the world of sports. College football each week and out. Utah's on a bye this week, but tons of other electric games. We've got Ohio State versus Penn State. That should be a fun top 5 matchup. NBA action is back. I'm fired up about that with the Jazz in action. And of course, we got the Utah Hockey Club now too. So got NHL, NBA, and we didn't even mention the World Series, Dodgers versus Yankees. Dodgers right now up 2-0. What a walk-off on that Friday night game. My goodness. However you guys are leaning, there is any or whatever sport you're feeling, you can head over to FanDuel today and get in on that $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your bet today. Head over to FanDuel today. All right, Ethan, coming back into this one, talking about where Utah goes from here. But actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to talk about Brandon Rose still. So, Rose, first of all, the drops by Pittman and Singer back-to-back plays, just absolute crushing. But then the other thing with Rose you see in a game like this is just his inexperience, because the first third down he encounters, he's rolling out to his left and he goes to throw it downfield. And if he had kept and ran it, it would have been a first down. But instead, he tried to force a ball to Landon King that wasn't there. Speaking of forcing a ball, he forced one to Munir McClain on a drive shortly after that, where he was double covered downfield, basically. And I think there only might have been 2 routes. So there wasn't a lot available there, but that's where I'd much rather Rose throw the ball away than throw to Munir McClain, who hasn't gotten a lot of run this year, in the double coverage. So that's where the offense isn't doing them all the favors. Like, hey, they only ran 2 routes. There's not a ton there, but still, when we ask Rose to make and deliver plays, his inexperience shows. Hence the interception late, where he comes. Utah's driving down. They had the screen. They were trying to keep things simple, and then he stared down his target for too long, and it was too late coming to it. And it was a great pick by the linebacker, but still, like, you just cannot turn the ball over at that point in that spot, and that's where Rose doesn't have a lot of experience. You mentioned how we felt good. I felt good about Rose coming into the season because I looked at it like this: he beat out Bryson Barnes last spring. Then Barnes won the job for him, or was battling with him in the job back in 23. So I looked at it like, oh, we got good things out of Bryson Barnes. Like, Brandon Rose is right there and he'll be ready. And obviously Wilson beats him out and then has a rough go around. He very well might be Utah's next starting quarterback. You could argue he looked a little bit better than Isaac. It's really a toss up between. I mean, the Utah offense still struggled and wasn't able to do a lot with either one at quarterback. What did you think of our first time? I still can't believe it's like the first consistent time we've seen Rose, because it feels like I've been talking about Brandon Rose since the first time I ever hosted this channel 2 years ago.
I know it really does feel that way. I think we kind of found out maybe why he hasn't been getting on the field, because it just seems like the coaching staff just hasn't trusted him. But in this situation, it comes down, obviously Rising's already out. Wilson gets a little banged up. He's the next guy. You got to turn to somebody. Somebody's got to go in and play. And he wasn't great by any means. Like you said, maybe a little bit better than Isaac Wilson. They've got 2 weeks to think about who they're going to start against BYU. And I don't know that it really matters either way, because I think they're both going to give you about the same level of play. Whoever you feel more comfortable with should be the player, but I don't know.
Yeah, is the noise you just made is like sums up how every Utah fan should be feeling about the way this team is performing right now, and especially about the unfortunate situation Utah is at quarterback. So outside of quarterback, we just look at this team. Well, quarterback will apply to what I'm about to say, but so the game losses in the books. 4 losses in a row. I still can't believe it. I don't know about you guys. But when you pull up Utah's schedule, I can just look at 4-0 to start the season. Hope was alive. Things were so good. And I still can't believe 3 losses in a row. This is a Utah team that hasn't reached 20 points. They haven't scored over 20 in a game in over a month. Like, with the way we thought about this team, that's still so hard to believe, coming off such a soul-crushing performance on offense against Houston. So, you've lost 4 conference games in any realm of possibility. Like, there was a time where it was like, okay, if this team only lost 3 games, well, really 2 games, but we've seen teams make a conference championship with 3 games. You're like, okay, there's still hope alive for a Big 12 title. Like, there's no hope for a Big 12 title. You want to try to get bowl eligible, obviously, this season. But more than anything, what's important for Utah to me is coming together and developing the guys that you're going to have back next year, particularly figure out if Isaac Wilson is going to show growth and improvement. Brandon Rose, the same thing. You want to see who's going to be your quarterback next year. How about some of your younger players on the defensive line? Like Dallas Vailaki is a guy I've really liked that I've seen out of him. Getting Smith Snowden continuing to get reps and grow. There are opportunities all over for his Darren Zipper. He's played a lot. I think he's already burned his red shirt. I believe so. So that's another guy. Get him more reps. Get him more opportunities. You want to still try and continue to do your best to win games, of course, too. But to me, this season, a lot is about getting other players reps and opportunities, because there's no games like game experience. And this is still a really talented Utah roster that has the potential, with some of these guys getting some reps early, to bounce back next year and still try and have a more successful season. They're not going to go into the next season as a conference contender, but there's a world where this team can be in the Big 12 race if they're able to manage and get guys more experience and figure out what they got in some of their more unknown commodities, or just ones who haven't gotten a chance to play as much.
Yeah, I think really what I want to see out of Utah for these last 4 games is reestablishing their identity and culture, because it just hasn't been there during this last streak. I mean, it's been talked about to death, but it doesn't look like Utah. We've never seen the coaching staff look this upset and confused. Whittingham just like looks completely lost. Not like, you know what I'm trying to say. Like the guys just don't look like they're fighting out there.
They don't look like they have answers for the problems that they have.
And that's been like, Utah has been the team that's like, we're going to out tough you guys. We're going to be out physical you guys. Like, we're going to go in there and fight and play every single snap like it's the last snap you're ever going to take. And that just hasn't been the identity of the team this season. And I think that in this new era of the transfer portal and NIL, you want to be impressive to the kids that are coming to your games on visits. You want to be impressive to the teams that are watching out there, you know? And so I just see like to see Utah have a little pride and a little more focus for the rest of this season. And really just, you know, you're not going to, like you said, they're not going to win the Big 12 anymore. Try to get bowl eligible, get a couple more wins under your belt, try to mess up some team seasons. You know, we'd all love to get a win against BYU. So just kind of, you know, you got nothing to lose at this point. Snap the ball, go see what happens. Play with some pride.
And the one thing I'll say about Utah, the teams they've lost to haven't been that good, but they have yet to get blown out. Like, they've been in every single game. Right. They had several plays to win the Arizona. This defense is too good. Utah's going to stay in games because of their defense. And with the way BYU is, I expect BYU to beat Utah when those teams play in the next couple weeks, right? BYU is clearly playing better right now, but Utah's defense is still going to make things difficult on BYU. So if this offense can improve, Utah can absolutely make that a game. Same thing against the likes of Colorado is a tough matchup with the way Shedeur is playing right now, but UCF's not playing very well. Iowa State still has to come out to Rice-Eccles Stadium, which in the past has been a tough place to win at, not as of late with the way this Utah team has looked, but there's still a lot of reason to say, hey, we want to see some improvement, see some growth to give us more optimism going into next season and what this year is quickly becoming the most disappointing season that, I mean, maybe this team has ever had. You can make that type of an argument for the expectations that, in my opinion, were fairly placed on this group with the amount of returning experience that they had coming back. And obviously injuries have played a role in that, but also this team is just, even the players on the field have disappointed for the expectations we had for them. And it's been just truly wild to watch. Ethan, before we jumped on, we were just talking about the fact that the NBA is back, and it just made me think, you know, with the NBA, there's always trades and things like that happen. Agree or disagree? If Utah was in the NFL, wouldn't they be trading like a 6th round to try and get Bryson Barnes back, who's just sitting on Utah?
Yeah, they should. Yeah, get somebody in there who knows the system and can execute, you know?
Yeah. I feel like that's generally what they would do because, like we said, a lot of this team struggles our quarterback. Bryson would not solve all this Utah team's issues. Like, they could very well even still be losing all the games that they have lost. But I got to believe with his experience, they at least find a way to win one more. Bryson made enough plays last year that he would have, like, against Houston, Utah easily could have won that game. There were so many opportunities to win that game, but key turnovers hurt Utah as well as all the misplays that we talked about. And this is the position Utah finds themselves in. It's still wild that we're here, but still some things to play for. We're all going to be excited for that BYU game, even though things are down and it's going to be hard for Utah to win. As I mentioned, right now, I expect BYU to win that game. That doesn't mean that Utah can't make it a game. Doesn't mean Utah can't win. And the same things you go for anyone else. This is still the team that I love watching and rooting for each week. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for them. And I'm not looking forward to the next 2 weeks of the quarterback the quarterback dilemma of Rose or Wilson. Who's going to play? Witt's not going to tip his hand. If this is Kyle Whittingham's last year, which, like we talked about on the show, it absolutely could be, he gets one more quarterback situation. I thought we were done with this. And he said Isaac would be the starter moving forward, but Isaac hasn't performed. So we're going to have to do this all again. It's going to be a crazy ride. And we're going to continue to cover it on Locked On Youth, but this is Locked On Youth. It's not just Utah football. And as I said off the top of the show, less than a week away from this, a week away right now from the start of Utah men's basketball. Want to talk about our expectations for the 2024 Runnin' Utes and an initial little preview on their upcoming start to the year. We'll dive into that in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Game Time. I was just talking about how Utah basketball will soon be back, and the place to get tickets at is going to be Game Time. Game Time is a new feature called Game Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. Game Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Picks, I love the curation that makes it even easier to save more on sports content, comedy, and theater events. The all-in pricing is a tog line that shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You also get the panoramic view from your seat in the app before you apply. How about that low price guarantee? Well, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage is the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's capital L for locked, O for on, and C for college. And the entire all of college is capitalized, but everything else in locked and on except for the first letter is lowercase. So you can enter that code in Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Ethan. Utah men's basketball is just about to be back. Utah basketball will be back. We'll talk about the women's team in their upcoming season at some point this week too. But the men's team, and the women's team as well. They've just had their Big 12 media days in the books recently. The Big 12 preseason poll is released. Utah sees themselves land at the bottom. Tough to see that, but I think it's fair. There are a lot of questions about Utah basketball right now. A disappointing end of the season a year ago, a fun run in the NIT, but we also know there's a difference between a run in the NIT and the run in the NCAA tournament. The best things about Utah's team last year, right? Brandon Carlson, Davon Smith, they're no longer here. Shout out to Carlson in the NBA, Smith with St. John's now. Gabe Matson's back, so that's something that's still really positive. His brother comes over. Miro Little. There's some other fun transfer additions that Utah was able to make. But when you're relying on the transfer portal and you have to reach from the outside of your own program, that means there's a lot of unknown about how those pieces will come together, how those pieces will work. When you factor that into Utah not doing great in the Pac-12 and now entering the Big 12, which many would say is the toughest basketball conference, it's absolutely fair to me that Utah lands at the bottom. Colorado lost a lot too, so I'm curious to see how Oklahoma State's trying to rebuild too, but Utah absolutely makes sense as the team picked to finish last in this conference. They got a chance to be better than that, but with how many questions they have, Ethan, hard to argue with the ranking.
I mean, I don't think anybody can argue with the ranking because this is an entirely brand new roster. There's been a bunch made this offseason. They've got 10 new players on the team. And most of those rotation spots that were there last year are gone. You're bringing back Gabe Madsen, you're bringing back Lawson Lovering, and I guess Hunter Erickson. And everybody else is new. So I have been the last couple of weeks, I've been writing some breakdowns on the roster, kind of combing through as much film as I can find on these guys, seeing what I can learn about these players. It's hard because there's not much out there on a bunch of these guys. There's a bunch of freshmen that are coming in. You've got some guys who redshirted last year, but didn't play at all. You've got guys coming in who played for other schools, but only 5-6 minutes a game off the bench. So it's a huge collection of players that we really have no film on. So what are they going to look like? It's anybody's guess. I think there's reason for optimism. I like the size on this team. I like some of the guys that they brought in from what I've seen. But you just don't really know. And they've spent this entire offseason trying to figure that out, get this rotation nailed down. And Craig Smith is coaching for his life right now. So we're going to have to see how it all comes together. Like I said, I think there's some reason for optimism, but you just kind of have to take it all with a grain of salt right now because it's just hard to see how this team's going to come together.
It is hard, especially when you have to play Kansas and Houston, and you're just that's still crazy that Utah's in the same conference as those teams for basketball. And heck, we can't even beat Houston in football right now. So that shows you the state of that already makes me nervous at that standpoint. With the basketball team, you mentioned a couple of the names. Two guys that I was really excited about were Ezra Assur, the transfer that you get from East Carolina, as well as Keanu Dawes comes over from Rice. Those are two athletic forwards that I feel like Utah hasn't had at their disposal really as of late. What did you think of their game? And outside of those two players in your review and prep for the season, who are some of the new additions that really excite you?
Yeah, so I think those two that you mentioned are good starting points here. Yeah. Assar is, a bigger forward. He can handle the ball a little bit, and he is a guy that likes to score. He's going to kind of put his back to the basket and kind of try to muscle people downside and take a couple elbow jumpers and stuff and, kind of do the big man combo forward thing. Yeah. So we'll kind of see how he fits in. I think it could end up working out. And then Keanu Dawes, more of a connective piece. guy who's a little bit bigger. I think can facilitate. He can play well on or off the ball. Kind of a passing hub as a forward is kind of what I've gleaned from him, which I think is interesting. The guy that personally has intrigued me the most, Mongolian Mike Sheriff-Jamps.
Yeah.
I think that I was watching his film from San Francisco last year, and his jump shot looks great to me. I think that the percentages are like not bad, but not good either. Like pretty much about what you'd expect. I think we could see his shooting percentages go up this season. I really like his form on his jumper. Should have a little bit more space playing next to the Madsen brothers, who are both good shooters as well. Can kind of free him up a little bit. He's really good in the mid-range. He's good on pick and pops from three. So I'm interested to see how he looks this season. That's a player I'm really excited about. I'm a little more skeptical on Miro Little. I know that a lot of people have been really looking forward to seeing him play, and I think that he could end up having a good year. I just am not sure yet.
Didn't he average like 1 point a game last year? And I'm excited for Miro too. But like
he just wasn't playing. It was like 7 minutes a game off the bench for Baylor. Spot minutes there on a team that was, not really concerned with his production, right? He has a good record overseas. He's played a lot in Europe and looked good doing that over there. But handing him the keys to be the full-time point guard on a team like this, we'll see how it goes. He's a big guard, right? Like he's listed like 6'3", 6'4". I think he's taller than that personally, just looking at him, but we'll see how it goes. He hasn't proven anything right now. And so it might be just a little bit of a tall order asking him to like be the full-time point guard for this team. But they might have to, because looking at this roster, they're kind of lacking in the ball handling department. Yeah. You lose Davon Smith, you lose Raleigh Wooster. It's like, who is the point guard going to be? I think they want it to be Miro Little. Time will tell if that's going to work out.
Time will tell a lot of things about this Utah team. Ethan, real quick before we get you out of here, I would say if Utah finishes 12th and higher in the Big 12, I would deem that as a success, and I would be pleased about the direction this team is moving in. If they were in the bottom 4, that'd be tough. It's probably what's expected and realistic more so, but like if they could get up to 12th, I think that would be a positive sign about like just, okay, maybe this team can get back into a better direction. What would you deem as a success in a Big 12 like standing finish for Utah?
Here's what I'll say. I think Utah needs to be a little bit better than that if they really want to feel like this season was a success, because they have just been kind of, I think so. Because they've been sitting in the Pac-12 with like not a ton of expectations on them, right? Like going into the year, they've been picked like, oh, maybe they'll finish 8th, maybe they'll finish like 7th, whatever, 6th even. And they go into the year and they're scrappy and they beat a couple of good teams and lose some games they should win, etc., and kind of just stumble to around 500 in conference play, maybe a little lower. I just think that this has to be the year for them to prove that they can do something. And I'm not calling for Craig Smith's job. That's above my pay grade. But I think that he has to be feeling the pressure from everything that's going on. And I understand it's a very tough conference, and you lost Brendan Carlson and a bunch of other guys to the transfer portal. But eventually you do have to put something on tape and put something on record to show that this team is trending upward. So it is a big ask, but I would like to see them in the top half of the conference.
Top half. Okay.
It's not going to be easy, and I would not project them to be there, but to flip the coin a little bit, looking at the football team, and we all know how disappointing that they've been. They were projected to finish first in the conference, win the conference. Oklahoma State was projected to be up there. UCF was projected to be up there. Arizona. All three of those teams have, Arizona, all those teams have struggled. And on the other side, BYU was picked like 14th, 15th, and they're in first right now. So you just never know. Like you just never, ever know. We'll see how the team looks. Like I've said 100 times to people this offseason, brand new roster. We have no idea how it's going to look. There's reason for optimism, but also reason for skepticism. At this point, I'm just ready to see the ball tip up and see what these guys can do.
Totally with you, especially like what you said about BYU. There were so many questions about how would things come together for the Cougars entering the football season, and they have. Utah could maybe be that team. I don't know if I'll like say like top team as in like contending, but like just that team to be in the mix for the top half of the conference, which would be a really successful thing for Utah. But it's going to be interesting to see what Utah basketball gets underway. Ethan, if people want more Utah basketball content and more Utah football content, where do they need to head over to?
Utezone.com. I'm fired up about basketball season starting. I'm going to be writing a lot. I'm the main guy for that this year. So look for me doing some basketball content. I'd like to get some content on the women's team as well. And they're projected to be a little bit better. So we'll kind of see how that goes, but I'm excited for the season to start.
We are as well. We'll be talking about the women's team at some point during this week on Locked On. It's still got a lot of football talk to get to, though. But Ethan, thank you for joining me.
Of course.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We appreciate you for stopping by and hope you'll come back tomorrow as we continue to talk about all the things wrong with Utah football right now. Have a good Monday, everyone.